Welcome to the Monday, January 16th City Council meeting. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Here. 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 Here.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and move the public comment portion of the meeting after the motion for Lafarge. So if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and move on to the police promotion oath of office ceremony, promotions of Sergeant Michael Cruz to the rank of Commander and Officer Jamie Prather to the rank of Sergeant. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor, thank you, Council. One of the most exciting things I get to do as Chief, I really honestly think, is the ability to promote. Tonight I get to promote two people, so I get doubly excited. I get to promote Sergeant Michael Cruz to the rank of Commander, and I get to promote Officer Jamie Prather to the rank of Sergeant. For those of you that are here don't know Mike, Mike's in his 20th year here at the County Police Department, and he spent the last 10.5 years as a sergeant, leading numerous shifts and numerous different responsibilities in the department. His track record is proven. I'm very excited to give him the opportunity to be promoted to commander. And for those of you that don't know Jamie, Jamie's in her 13th year here at the County Police Department. The last 6 of it she spent as a detective, working some of the most major crimes that we've had in our community and throughout the county on our major crimes task force. So I couldn't be more proud to have the opportunity to promote Jamie as well. So without further ado, Mike, can you come up first? Would you like to introduce your family real quick?
Yes. I have my wife, Katie, and my son, Michael. My daughter, Raina's in college right now, so she can attend.
You don't want to give a big speech?
No.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Michael Cruz, having been appointed to the position of sergeant, having been appointed to the position of commander, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the ordinances of the City of McHenry, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of a McHenry Police Commander according to the best of my ability. Okay, you want to come up? This is where you get to take out all your frustration. Get out of the room before the blood starts to fall. Jamie, you're on that. Come on up. Hopefully we'll correct that. Okay, any big speeches?
No.
Want to introduce your family?
Yeah, I have the whole first row. My mother-in-law, cousin, and my son, looks like he's not here with me right now. My husband, Yolo, Paul, Evelyn's over here, Holly, and then my husband.
Thank you. Okay, are you ready?
I am.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jamie L. Prather, having been appointed to the position of sergeant, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the ordinances of the City of McHenry, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of McHenry Police Sergeant to the best of my ability. Oh, you have a big job here. Very careful with your mom, okay? Well, that's Did you practice? Oh, come on up, bud. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you stay my right, your left, there'll be a picture of popular reception down the hallway, unless you want to stay for the meeting in Britain.
Take care.
What's your husband do?
He's a police officer. Oh, yeah. And Paul's very loud. Everyone does know him.
Prather?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is he a sergeant or?
No, patrol.
You didn't sneak in, I saw you.
Can I go there too?
Can we all take a break? All right. Thank you all for, and I just want to congratulate Jamie Prather and Mike Cruz, two amazing people. They're going to definitely help this police department in every way possible. So, Chief, great move and great decision on that. So moving on with the public hearing portion, proposed amended and restated annexation agreement with Meyer Material. I am going to, I'm looking for a motion.
No, let's do a public hearing first. We're going to open up the public hearing.
Public hearing. Sorry, public hearing as of 7:07. At this time, I'd like to ask anyone that would like to come up to the podium for a public hearing for this item, please do so at this time.
So Randy, that would be you. Why don't we do our short presentation here? For everyone in the audience and on the city council, you have attached to this, proposed agreement, the narrative that's proposed, the site plan that outlines the property in question, the existing conditions, the operations plan, and the reclamation plan. There's two people that have signed up. So why don't we run through those plans first for everybody, and then we'll listen to the two people, and that'll be the public comment.
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Mark Sal, and I'm an attorney in Crystal Lake.
Mark,
on behalf of Meyer Material.
can you hit the middle button? There you
Got
go.
it?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. We're here tonight really we came for an extension of the current time frame for an additional 10 years. And as we talked to the city attorney and city staff, we wanted to make sure that we covered some of the precautions that we had for the south pit, also in this amended and restated agreement. So that's what you have before you. Let me introduce Randy Willie, who is the operations manager for Meyer Material, and we also have Jake Rogers with Baxter and Woodman, who did the mining plans. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. I have a thumb drive with a few slides on it, or are they? Okay. Jake also brought some foam boards if we need to point out things in maybe more detail. First of all, I apologize. I'm on a medicine that scratches my throat, so it's not a good position to be in, but I'll do my best. Again, Mark said, my name is Randy Willie. I manage land and environmental services for Meyer Material Company, which was bought by Wholesome, merged with Lafarge, and is soon to be back to the brand of Wholesome. I thought I'd at least go through a couple of slides just to cover a little bit about what we're asking for in our amendment. So the North Pit was originally annexed in 2002. It was bolted on to our existing pit on the south side. You can see this aerial photo shows both sides of the road. We actually constructed a conveyor in 2003 and put it underneath Route 120, and we convey the materials back. Question is, we need more time because the reserves are valuable to us and taxpaying community. The ownership history, again, we're going back to the brand name of Wholesome. It's a Swiss company. The Lafarge brand was used during the merger. Meyer Material Company is still a viable company who actually owns the minerals in the land. The city ordinance actually provides for limited hours of operation, bonding requirements, setback distances, that all help control the activities on the site. And again, this has been in play for 20 years already. Hit enter, please. What you see on the screen is the mine plan, the operations plan. You can see the excavation that took place until we stopped mining, but the yellow lines indicate where we will be building earthen berms with the topsoil and overburden around the site as we progress. The cell numbers are indicated. We'll be mining from the southeast corner of cell A, moving through B towards C upon conclusion. This will probably take 10 years or more, depending on economic conditions. Down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a berm detail. Shows you approximate length, width, and height of the berm. That fits within the setback zone, which is about 160-foot setback. That it was originated during the 2002 permit. Can you hit enter, please? This is kind of a view of what one of these berms would look like when constructed. This is along Glacier Ridge. We put this berm in 2018. You can hit the next arrow slide, and this is what it would look like from a neighboring property with a 50-foot setback before you get to the berm, but you can see how well it would screen. And then if you hit the arrow one more time, you'll see we plan on seed blanketing this berm upon installation, along with, at the crown, we'll probably do hydro seeding, whatever it takes to get the vegetative stand rolling the entire time. It'll be silt fenced along the base to keep erosion from getting off the berm. Arrow up, please. Just a brief trip down memory lane. We did advance a 8-foot diameter tunnel underneath Route 31. Took about 3 weeks to get through. You can hit the arrow key. But ultimately, we pushed the piping to the other side, opened up the North Pit in 2003. We were actually in operation there through about 2005 or 6. Then ran into a pretty bad housing market, which slowed things down. Also, when Wholesome took ownership about 2 years into the long housing downturn, they sold the ready-mix portion of the business. So we became strictly a mining company. So we don't control as much of the end use as we once did when we were a concrete company, but there is still plenty of use. It just takes more time. Most of these products actually meet IDOT specs, particularly the sands and the road gravels. Unfortunately, the deposit on the north side is probably a lot finer than it was on the south side. There's some pluses for the perimeter, meaning we won't be crushing, but we will be selling products that are of smaller gradations for the duration of the mine. Next slide. This is the property restoration slide. Originally, the lake was a little bit larger. It went farther north than the blue that's shaded there. We ended up putting more drill holes in the last few years to find out exactly what we would have from a gradation standpoint and from an IDOT spec standpoint. And we did find out that there's a lot of dirty aggregate the farther north you go, and we probably won't be going as far down into the aquifer to retrieve those minerals. So there's going to be a lot more 6-7 to 1 sloped land on the north property boundary. We'll create a lake, but somewhat smaller than originally had planned. And again, it's all going to be permitted through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. There will be bonds associated with those. We've also included bonds in our amended and restated agreement for the city, specifically for the north side. You can go to the next slide, which is really just a picture of what we've done on the south side. This is west of the grade school, over by our entrance, and that's probably about a 4 to 1, 4.5 to 1. It's not always going to be that soft in areas, depending on where we go down to the water. It probably gets down to 3 to 1, but that is in compliance with state of Illinois regulations for pasture land. And that's really all I had, just kind of a quick overview of the project. Is there any questions?
Okay, why don't you sit tight and we'll talk to the public and then city council.
All right, John Ellickson, do you have anything to say, sir? Would you like to come up to the podium, or are you okay? All right. Do you want to speak on behalf of this item? All right, Joanne? You can please state your full name and address for public record.
Sure, it's Joanne Hydrowski.
Can you hit the mic, the middle button? Perfect, thank you.
Joanne Hydrowski. I've lived in Martin Woods for almost 40 years. One of the first houses in there. My address is 2409 Bennington Lane. So there's a couple things going on. Gravel pit's one of them. It's a big one. In conjunction with the asphalt plant and the new construction from Stonebridge. So we have tons of acres surrounding this little subdivision. The noise is huge. The asphalt plant runs when they're not supposed to. I've called police. I've called your office. I've talked to your assistant several times. I called a lawyer. Lawyers have started filling out complaint forms. And I called, and you guys don't have complaint forms. I've called. They run at 3 o'clock in the morning. Excuse me. I have a sinus thing. And it's getting worse and worse. Like last night, they were running at 7 o'clock. I did get in my car a couple times and go over there. The gravel pit, Lafarge, they do lock their gates, but that little bit of land you see, sorry, I'm kind of nervous. The little bit of land you see that they showed you, that they fixed, is very small. 50 feet is like not even half of my driveway. The mess from the gravel trucks is huge. I've seen cars slide. I've seen cars my car got hit with stones dropping out of the trucks from the bottom. You know, where the back comes down? Mm-hmm. My son got his car back windows knocked out with the gravel. The silt, the soot, the slime on the street. I walked over there, got out of my car, and walked up this thing at times. Stonebridge, I don't know how they're going to sell those houses because the noise is huge. And I don't even know how that school can function. My husband would be here, but he's out of town right now. And I'm speaking on behalf of the neighbors across from me. They're older. And the 3 people are selling in the spring because they can't stand the noise. The construction from Stonebridge is right on Martin Road. And it starts before 7 o'clock in the morning. 6:40, they're out there. 6:40, and they're 75 feet from the street. Even now.
Stonebridge, Wonderly.
That's where they're doing the retention pond on Martin Road. And it's just unbearable. The asphalt plant, I've called several, I called the EPA. In the summer, the smell is so bad that I cannot go out in my yard. And they're actually, and my face turns red for pulley weeds. I've called them up. I've actually talked to one of the people not in McHenry, but the phone truncates over to somebody, the owner, one of the owners. And I told him, I said, don't you have control? He goes, we're in compliance. I said, good, because I called the EPA. They don't handle it last year, but they're going to start handling it this year, where they're actually going to take residential problems with smells such as the asphalt, because it is harmful. Those levels, if my skin's turning red, it's terrible. And I told him about that. So we've got the asphalt plant, which is right here. So I live here. The asphalt plant is right across from McHenry, 120 in the city of McHenry. The school buses go in and out there. You got the asphalt, the concrete trucks going in and out. The semis going in and out. And when they go down 120 and they use, I don't know what it's called, it slipped my tongue. When they downshift their trucks, the noise is huge. Not to speak of the TNT blasts. You guys don't even know. They do it like 2 o'clock in the morning, 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And it shakes the house. And I'm pretty far from that. So we're really upset. Some of my neighbors are older and they just didn't want to come out. And I told them I would speak on behalf of them. But we don't know what to do. We're in a quandary where we've got 3 Stonebridge, the asphalt plant, and the gravel pit. Now, the gravel pit's supposed to shut at, I forget, what is it, 3:30, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? The gate's closed, but they're still operating their plant inside. I took a drone, and I did tell this to your assistant a couple times, and saw them functioning. So, I don't know what to tell you. I know Doug, I forget his last name, he lives next to me, he's selling. He says the noise is abominable. He can't take it anymore. He needs sleep to fly the plane. So the guy across the street just bought the house, and he's got 5 kids, and they're probably going to sell. The older people across the street from me, they've got a house in Wisconsin. They're going to go there because he actually wears hearing aids that he takes out during the day. One time when I called the police, I told them that he takes them out at night because he can't sleep. And if his house starts on fire and the alarms go off, he won't hear them. I mean, it's really bad. The smell is bad. I mean, these guys, if you ask them where I live, because they're my neighbors. One of them's Newark, which I just met, but they'll tell you. So I don't know how Stonebridge is going to sell those houses over there because they're closer to the gravel pit entrance than I. And it's dangerous. The trucks pull out in front of people. I've seen cars sliding on the snow to stop. They don't care. And then if you look at the comments when they renewed their contract last time, this has been happening since, you'll see on there the truck drivers, one said, haha, McHenry, we're back, we're staying. And I tried to explain that, but it's noise, it's constant. So the asphalt plant sounds like an airplane running all day. Then you've got Stonebridge with their big, heavy moving equipment putting in drainage ditches and building all day. I'm talking like 6:40 till like 7 o'clock at night in the summers later. Then you've got, I don't know how that school can function over there. Then you've got the gravel pit. And they have the big light on their tower, and it's always on, and they're running. You can literally hear the stuff going down. And when something is big going down, it's really loud. And then the TNT thing bothers me because we're not that far. So there's more than I, and I'm speaking on behalf of them and my neighbors, and you can ask any one of them if I'm making it up. But I wouldn't be here, truthfully. I would not be here right now. This is almost 40 years I've been living here, almost. This is the first time I've been here because my fear was that they would do this. And when the little pictures that they're showing you there are not accurate, you got to go out there. I did walk it. I did go out and park on the street where the little cutoff is, and I did walk that, not in the fall. And it's not much. It's a little bit like this much, and then you've got a huge gravel driveway to their area. And I'm not asking for them to do anything. I'm just consider all that.
Okay.
Consider all the taxes we're paying. I mean, I don't want to move, but I'm going to have to move. 2 of my neighbors are already moving. The guy, 2 houses are from me are moving. So I don't want to keep you. So I don't know what else to do. We don't know what else to do. I mean, I tried to get to you to talk to in the past 3 years. Yeah, I've talked to your assistant. It's a guy. I forget his name. And then I also talked to the building guy.
That guy over there with the beard.
Ross.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long name that I couldn't remember. We've talked.
Ross, ROSS.
We've talked, and then there was another guy I talked to. Somebody else said, when you're not there, they give.
Well, why don't we do this? Can you give, Monty's my assistant, so if you can give Monty your cell phone number, all right, and then I'll give you a shout. Is there anyone else that'd like to make a public comment during the public hearing of this portion of this agenda item? Sure, if you can come up to the podium, please.
Hi, my name is Judy Bruce, and I live in Martin Woods as well. One of the questions that I have is, has an environmental impact assessment report been done to understand what the impact that this would have in the surrounding area?
This is a public hearing portion, so we usually do not respond.
But we'll ask that guy behind you
Yeah.
as soon as you're done.
When you're done, we'll go
Okay.
ahead.
Anything else you want to say?
No, that was it. Thank you so
we'll
much.
go with that.
Thank you.
Can you speak to that, Randy? Sure. Or whoever.
I think I'm on.
Yep.
Regarding environmental impacts, the mine has been there. Meyer Material acquired it in 1988. It was run by the Millers from 1976 to 1988, and before that, where the bank was on the corner, I believe it goes back to the early 50s. When it comes to air, noise, water, we've had monitoring wells installed in the north pit since 2002, two down gradient. We sample them every quarter. We send the results to the health department and the city. We've also put monitoring wells in the south pit more recently. Those are being sampled for water levels, pH, TSS, farm chemicals, etc. We only use fuels. Whatever fuels we have, if we were to spill them, we have emergency spill kits, elephant trunks, pads, absorbents. We also have sand, which we could absorb. When it comes to dust, our dust control measures, it's a moist product because it's coming out of the earth wet. It actually has a natural moisture content, probably 1.5% to 2%. So even when we put it through the crushing plant, of which we're permitted through the EPA, we don't require spray bars. However, we do water our roads. We sweep our roads and entrances. To the point that was made about the track out, we do have a sweeping service that comes 3 days a week. We have been, actually Ross reached out earlier this year because there was additional track out that was building up on the curb. So we got the McHenry Police Department out to help us on a Saturday to flag traffic at 4 in the morning. And we had a Bobcat out there to clean up what was ever on the street. We do know that there's probably some coming from the development across the street as well. But our dust control practices are top notch. I don't see sand and gravel being as dusty of a place to deal with. We do have crushing equipment, but that crushing equipment is well off the property boundary, and there's limited travel beyond the property boundary of dust. When it comes to noise, we've done noise studies at the school. We've done dust studies at the school back when this was originally permitted. We are within state and federal guidelines. Noise, we did by the city a handheld dosimeter. We bought them a handheld air monitor, so if they get complaints that they think are worthy, they can come out and test everything that they think we're violating. I also say it's probably, from an environmental habitat standpoint, there's plenty of fish, fowl, and deer that run through our open lands. We have 800 acres. But I don't think there's anything that we're doing that's damaging the environment that would impact any wildlife.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay.
A question I got, and maybe I can help answer a few concerns. As far as the north side, what's the process? Is there going to be semis going in and out of the north side?
No. Thank you for asking. So the north side is about 157 acres. There's going to be berms around the perimeter, so we're probably going to be disturbing, let's say, 130 or 40 acres. There is only 2 pieces of equipment that will be operating with people, one being a front-end loader, which does the dry bank extraction, And then when we get down to the water level, we'll have somebody in a backhoe. So both of those processes are very quiet, and they'll be down below the surface. There are no trucks. The only trucks that we would ever bring in there is to build the berms, because we use haul trucks to construct the perimeter berms. So we would probably have a backhoe and 2 or 3 haul trucks. And because we're not going to be crushing on that side of the road, we're going to have what they call a grizzly screen, which actually screens off the bigger boulders that can't be conveyed by a belt conveyor. If there's enough of them that are piled up, periodically we would probably go over and load a truck full and take them across the street and crush them if there's even demand for it. Because if you can't put enough material of a certain, gradation on the ground, you're not going to advertise it. But there might be a situation where we might take a truck over the road there's enough cobbles. Otherwise, it's pretty much a finer operation that's conveyed underneath the road.
There's one exception to that, and that's the tree area.
The tree area, because those trees we paid, I think it was $84,600 to the city as part of the tree replacement program. Those trees, there's probably 18 acres of trees, and those trees would have to come down, call it in season, where it's going to be noisy. I mean, you can't take trees down without making some noise, but I think there's allotment for an 8-week period to remove them all, and we think that's adequate.
And we provided for that in the agreement.
Okay.
Alderman Santi, go ahead.
Hey, hi, Randy. Real quick, just so I understand this and confirm, the east end of your property on north of 120, it butts up right to that west end of Stonewall. Is that correct?
Yeah, I forget the name of it. Stonewater?
Stonewater. I'm sorry.
There you go. Correct.
Okay. That's all right. So I'm make sure I'm reading this correctly. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions by council? Nope. Alderman McCarthy, go ahead.
Thank you. McHenry is built on gravel, and it's been a big source of income for our city. But I think it's time to, come on, put the brakes on, because you're going to make a crater. When that gets dug out, you're going to make another crater. So I got a question for you. What do you plan on doing after these are mined out? Because I've been hearing for years, for decades, that you're going to put homes in there. Do you have any homes yet out of all the gravel that's been mined since 1976?
No, the east end is an industrial park. That's where the bus facility and everything on Dot Street and Hill Street are.
I'm talking about the mines.
And then on the east side, which we call Parcel A, which was annexed in the 70s, that's an industrial park that has the Ozinga Ready Mix plant and Curran's asphalt plant. And I think that's where Miller Formless is located in that general area. Then it's restored behind the school. All there is a little haul road that connects what we call Parcel A, the industrial park, to parcels B, C, D. This is all on the south side. That's all zoned RS1 with a mining overlay district. But we wouldn't redevelop that or sell that off to a developer until we were completely removed from it.
So what do you plan on doing with this project you're talking about now? When
This would this north parcel on the other side would be single-family homes, multifamily homes with a lake. There's several examples that are in McHenry County and beyond that would show the redevelopment of sites after they've been mined. Some are used for recreational, some are used for homes off of Route 25 in Carpentersville. I think it's called Silverstone Lakes. That was a Meyer Material project. That's all single-family homes. And adjacent to it in Algonquin, right behind, I think there's a Thornton's gas station there now, right at Lake Cook Road and 62 to the south. That's all single-family homes. There's a grade school. There's soccer fields all the way down to Sandbloom Road. So it just takes time before that land becomes available to get redeveloped.
Thank you.
Any other questions by council?
Anybody else from the public?
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Anyone else from the public that'd like to make a? Oh, Alderman Glad, go ahead.
I just wondered, on the agreement, we're looking at B in the event Meyer fails to complete mining operations before the expiration of the 2032, a automatic 5-year extension. Why would we go with a 10-year extension and then have an automatic 5 after that? What's the thinking of that?
Probably economic conditions. I guess I can tell you that the South Pit, from a geologic standpoint, was a lot more coarse material, offered a lot more products. The North Pit, and actually what's left in the South Pit, we're pretty much going to convert into the product list is probably half of what it used to be. We probably think our sales are going to drop by 40%. And if there's other operations nearby that compete with us, that might slow the process of our ability to sell down, because we're only going to have a certain amount of products that we're going to be able to move, especially when it comes to having coarse aggregates. It's always easier to try to package up coarse and fine aggregates together so you can move a lot more of your fine aggregates, because in this area, there's a lot more fine aggregates than coarse. It's not limestone.
I understand that. But I also understand that when this whole thing started back in 2002 to go on the north side, okay, it was sold to the council that it was going to be just a few short years. You were going to mine it out, and it was going to be reclaimed, and everything was going to be fine and dandy. And unfortunately, whoever guessed wrong, because sometimes engineering is an educated guess, there was nowhere near the gravel and the quality of gravel. So you guys kind of take and just pushed it on the side and kept working on the south end, and almost kind of ignored the north end to some extent, because there wasn't as much need for the type of sand that you were getting out of there. Now, that was how many years ago? And are we going to hear the same story 10 years from now?
I hope not, because
Well,
I hope the housing market comes back a lot stronger.
To an end. It has to come to an end, is the way I look at it. I mean, you can't just keep asking for an extension after an extension after an extension. The way I look at it is, if we're going to give you a 10-year extension, we want you out of there in 10 years, as far as reclaimed and ready to be sold off to a developer or whatever, so that they can build a subdivision. It's got to happen. If we've got things in agreements to where, well, then if it isn't done in 10 years, we're going to give you an automatic extension of 5 more years. No, it's got to be done in 10 years, period, the way I look at it. I don't know what you're going to do with
the product. I guess what happens if it's not automatic, and we would have to come back and...
To keep hearing about the economic situations and everything else, that is your business problem. But our problem is that we've got residents that have been for years and years waiting for some of this. When all the people from Martin Woods came out here, when you extended on the north side, Alan Miller was here. He was your representative. And he promised us, this grandiose, beautiful subdivision we were going to have in a short period of time. It was only going to be a few years. And these people in Martin Woods have been very, very accommodating as far as waiting to see this come into fruition, and it isn't happening. And we're sitting back here representing those people in Martin Woods, and I've got to tell you that we're trying to represent them to where this has to come to a closure. And to say that 10 years and then 5 more year extension, no. You need to send back to your company the fact that you got to be done in 10 years. And that's the way I look at it. I would never vote for any additional automatic extensions. I've worked with you for many years on votes and everything else. You know that. But come on, sooner or later, it's got to come to an end. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments by council? Alderman Devine?
Randy, I have a question about the reclamation plan of the property after 10 years, or if it gets extended another 15 years. How is that going to work? Will that be done as it goes along, or reclaimed as it goes along, or is that afterwards?
Yes. The most efficient way to mine sand and gravel is to reclaim it as you go, so hopefully you don't have to move dirt twice because it's much more expensive. So in theory, we should be moving dirt from cell B into cell A and from C to B and D to C strategically, so as we're going through the mine from east to west, that it's being reclaimed particularly on the top portion, and then the lake is created as you kind of retreat.
Okay, so you're starting on the east side then?
East side, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, I do have one more question on the hours of mining operation. It says all other activities. It says processing, loading, and maintenance hours shall be from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. When we're talking processing, what are we talking as far as processing? Are we talking the crushers and everything else?
That would only apply to the south pit.
I know.
With the exception of if we had to grade a road on a Saturday, I guess they could grade a road that gets into the north pit. But there's, like I said, the processing part, the field, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. That's a conveyor belt running in a one piece of equipment.
But the 5 a.m. is going on at 5 o'clock in the morning?
There is no crushers on the north side. It would.
Okay, I'm just looking where it says processing, and
okay.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
Okay.
What are we talking about as far as processing exactly, if you could explain that?
It would be, the field operations would limit everything you can do on the north side, because there's really nothing other than grading a road to get in and out of the north pit. I don't see any other major maintenance things that would require us to be there before 5 a.m. or after 8 p.m. or any other time. There's not much equipment over there.
Like I said, one of my, qualms was the fact when I see processing, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And,
It's probably could be removed from it, because there's really no processing other than putting material into a feeder onto a belt.
Okay, so that's not really processing, that's just
well, it goes through a screen, so I guess technically
it's part of the loading
that's
process.
one process, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd feel more comfortable seeing that processing taken out of there too.
If, I don't know who this should be directed to, it might be, could be Dave and Mark, but how does this, when I read this 5-year extension here, it says in the event Meyer fails to complete mining operations, so that does not take into effect any kind of restoration, which could be done in those years after those first 10 years. Is that how I should understand this and read this? That could happen? Okay, and the other question I have is, when is there a drop dead date in regards to, and how is this announced? Meyer fails to complete. Are they coming to announce something to us, or to say that we are not going to be completed by May 1st, 2032? How is that communicated, or what's that deadline? Is that a year before that? How is that done? And
this is automatic. If you want to change it, absolutely.
What do we have in regards to, should we have something coming back for an approval of that extension?
You can, if it's negotiated, yeah. Right now, it's automatic.
Right now, it's automatic.
Yeah, so we did a year prior, that would have to come back with the consent of council.
Yeah, a year prior, like 2031?
Correct.
And both parties would be comfortable with this?
I have no problem.
I would like to have that.
That's a problem.
That's what I was just telling him.
Okay, I figured.
I think
Thank
that's
you.
a good idea.
Mayor. That's all I have.
Any other questions, comments? The council? Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public that hasn't spoken yet would like to get up to the podium? Sir, please step up to the podium. No problem. We appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. If you could just state your name and address for public record, please.
My name is Dale McBee, address is 5905 Radcliffe Court, Martinwood, Unit 1.
Can you push that button?
The middle one.
The middle button.
Yeah.
There you go.
Did you hit, should I repeat it?
No, you're good.
Okay. I've been a resident since 2007, so what, about 15 years, and I love the subdivision, but my concern too that I just want to bring up, it was a little bit talked about environmental concerns by Judy here, my neighbor, but I'm a little concerned with the drinking water. We all have wells there, at least I believe we do. There's 30 units in Martin Woods in Unit 1. I don't know if I mentioned, I think I was pushing the button at the time, but I'm the president of the Martin Woods, current president, Property Owner Association, and yes, it still exists. Mm-hmm. We're a nonprofit. We file every year. So, and like I said, there's 30 units there. My house and one other house by the water retention area are the only homes that don't have basements. The reason is I understand we have an underground spring that comes from the direction of this, operation. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how deep. I don't know, but I know I have some of the dirtiest water in my home, and I have about $10,000 invested in equipment to clean my water. It's just not a water softener. Looks like a big company back there, my behind my garage in a room. I've got all the tanks and everything to filter the water, and it's still dirty. And I'm just concerned with the flow of the water, the quality of the water. I haven't had it tested, but I occasionally get a lot of dirt in my lines in the home, even though I've got that much equipment in there. So I'm concerned with that. I just want to raise that up as something to look at. But we pay some of the highest property taxes, and I'm sure in McHenry there. And I do want to say one thing is that the snow removal is really great in McHenry, so I love that. But I want to stay there, but I just find it a hard place to retire, coming up. Well, I'm already partially retired, but, I find it difficult to, see myself there long term. And since 2007, 15 years that I've been there, the housing values haven't gone up that well, and I don't want to see anything that reduces it further on. And I appreciate the questions being raised relative to this 10 years and an extension of 5. It's got to end, and we have to know. And I just like that to be considered. So,
sir, if I could, we'll go into the environment a little bit when you're done. And do you hear the asphalt plant?
I do. My house is lower into the court, so I believe I just met my neighbor, Joanne. She's a little higher up, but I do hear it.
When?
I'll tell you, I feel it, and I always thought it was a boombox in a car, but I could feel the vibration sitting on a couch, and it's late at night at times. Asphalt usually really early in the morning. I can't tell you exactly when. I do smell that, but I do feel vibrations down in my
Do you think that's from the asphalt plant?
I don't know.
Oh.
I have no idea. I haven't investigated it.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there are sounds and smells and dirt.
Okay, so thank you. From on the south side, if everybody remembers, Scott was very diligent about requiring monitoring wells, more so than Meyer was had in existence at the time, upstream and downstream, and that same well installation is being required here. So could you either explain that, Randy, or have Baxter Woodman explain where the wells are and how they're upstream and downstream and how they work?
Yes, originally back in 2002, when this was first annexed, we were required by the city to install 2 upgradient and 2 downgradient wells on the north pit. And we have been sampling them for 20 years, as well as now the more recent ones that were added to the south pit. So there's a total of 6 wells. But as far as the north pit goes, I think the city kind of copied what the county ordinance was from the 90s, and then the results go to the health department.
They're northwest corner and southeast corner of the north site?
They're on each of the 4 major sides of the parcel. 2 are upgradient, 2 are down gradient. So I guess, yeah, maybe you can point them out. Yeah.
You don't need that thing, just put it in front of the podium there.
So these are the wells.
Here, you wanna show this guy, sir, you wanna come in and look at this thing? The guy who was just here? Sure. Well, whoever, come on up.
Here, I'll hold it. You can talk to the mic.
So as we were discussing, these are the 4 monitoring wells that are currently there, and they've been.
Yeah, point to them specifically.
So here's monitoring well 1 along the southern boundary. Monitoring well 2 is on the eastern boundary. Monitoring well 3 is along the northern boundary, and monitoring well 4 is along the western boundary.
So on each perimeter line for you two who just walked up, in the middle of each one, there's a monitoring well. Which way is the water running?
So the reports are indicating that it's coming this direction. So from the northwest to the.
And where's
southeast.
Martin's Woods?
So they're down over here.
Okay. Just so everybody's clear, and that's the same situation that was on the south side. The water doesn't go northeast, it's going southeast.
Yeah, so that's what the reports indicate, and as they've been provided to the city, there's been no indication of any kind of contaminants so far.
Yeah, and you're watching it, right?
Right, and they've been monitoring that since they've been installed.
Okay. And that's the same analysis that we asked for on the south that we're getting.
Correct,
on the north.
yes, that's in the new plan.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
All right. Just to clarify, Attorney McCardle, when you talk about groundwater, one small deflection in groundwater could change the direction of water by 50, 60 degrees very easily. So I'm just saying, you know,
I'm just saying, I haven't heard that. I mean, we've been doing water here for a long time.
Yeah.
And no one's ever said that, other than right now.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you that I know for the fact that we've had problems in the past as far as underground water changing in several different directions. We had one subdivision where a gentleman bought a new house, and in 3 years, he had problems with water coming up in his basement like crazy, and everything and anything he tried to do for 6, 8 months, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. And that's because of the fact that water, just like water on the top, least resistance, and wherever the least resistance is, that's where the water decides to go. So we have to be careful with that because we're not total engineers here as far as water, but
right. But that is what we're doing. So for everybody's information, that's how we're monitoring it, and that's the direction of the flow.
I understand. I just saying that we don't paint a rosy picture if it isn't there one way or the other.
All right, Randy, do you have anything else, Randy?
I guess a couple of the notes that I took from earlier, if I could respond.
Sure.
I heard TNT, dynamite, where sand and gravel is an unconsolidated material left by glaciers. We do not blast. So I don't know where the blast sounds are coming from. That's not coming from us. The housing development to the east of us, which I'm going to call Stonewater, if that's the right term, that's in the village of Wonder Lake. We have a good working relationship with the land developer about the buffer zone between us. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah. And the asphalt plant is not a Meyer material or a wholesome business. It is owned by Current Contracting out of Crystal Lake. They lease ground from us in the industrial area, which we call Parcel A. So,
well, we all have to monitor the asphalt hours under your lease, the noise under your lease. Everybody needs to watch and make sure that everybody's operating by the rules here. We go through this every so often. Yep. We just have to make sure, you know, everything's operating in accordance with the rules.
I guess I haven't heard much
We haven't heard complaints.
complaint-wise out of Kern or Ozinga on
Right.
the east end. So,
Right, but if we do, we need to get on it.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it. Anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment before we close the public hearing? Sir? Please state your name and address for public record.
Hit this button first. Rob Johnson, 2002 Parkland Avenue, Lakeland Park. I've heard that they monitor these well points and stuff, and in my former life of various things, I've heard that from other vendors, other suppliers, other companies and stuff, and it was usually not until I asked them, okay, then give me the results of your tests, give me the results of your analysis, show me when you've tested this, and give me these results every time you do it. Suddenly then everything changed, right? So it's my recommendation to this body to ask for those results in hand to validate them. Unless, of course, that's already being done. I don't want to assume. But if it's not, I think that might be a good idea.
It is being done.
Is it?
Yeah, I receive every well monitor result with analysis from Lafarge Holcomb on a quarterly basis.
Okay. And those are validated?
Yes.
And everything? Okay. Just thought I would bring it up because I'm thinking about it.
That is in their agreement from the south side, that they have to supply those to me. And Randy's very good at getting.
Yeah, that
getting
same
those.
comment was made on the south side about 5 years ago when we were into this debate, and we tightened everything down, and that was one of them.
That was a big one,
Is
right?
to get us regular quarterly reports without requesting. You submit them, and then we review them.
Okay.
That was good comment, but
good
already been
process.
covered.
And I do agree with the gentleman from Ward number 2 that the automatic renewal is probably not in your best interest. That should be amended. That's my opinion. Thank you,
Rob.
guys and ladies.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? All right. I am looking for a motion to exit the public hearing portion, close it. Alderman Santee?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Miller? Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is a motion to adopt an ordinance approving amended and restated Meyer Material Annexation Agreement North Property. With this motion, it is to remove the processing portion of the,
Yeah, I would edit paragraph D having to do with the hours of the mining operation pursuant to the suggestion of the council, removing processing and loading and replacing it with what actually takes place, which is placing the material on the screen and conveying it under Route 120 and maintenance hours from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the second amendment would be in paragraph B above that, relating to the 5-year extension, to modify that. Instead of a 5-year extension, it would be in by the end of 2031, written notice will be provided to both the city council and to, if Meyer's interested in extending the agreement at all, an amendment to the agreement has to be made. There's no other way around that, Randy.
all right. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Subject to those two amendments.
Alderman Santee?
I will make that motion.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Strack?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion by council?
Are you good with that, Randy? It takes two to tango here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The public comment portion was pulled. I would like to go ahead and put that back on the agenda here for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment for items not on the agenda this evening? Once again, these are items that are not on the agenda. Okay, moving on to the presentation of the annual financial report for the fiscal year ending April 20th, 2022. We have Kevin here from Etter and Casella.
There you got this down. All right, so I'll try to make this short. I just wanted to come out and present the annual audit like we do every year, just let you guys know how things went, where things kind of ended. So, as usual, everything went well overall as far as field work. Derek, Carolyn, and the rest of the staff in the finance department were great to work with. Got us everything we needed and in a timely manner as well. Most of the entries made by us this year were mainly just reclasses for reporting purposes, and then some year-end entries that are always made with the audit for things such as the police pension, IMRF liabilities, and the OPEB liabilities. In the report, you will notice that there isn't a single audit this year. You guys had one last year with the CURES money. You did get ARP money, but you did not have to have a single audit related to that. It was over the requirements. However, with the ARP money, there was new guidance out that allowed for an alternative method that's currently being wrapped up right now and will be submitted. So you will not have a formal single audit, but you will have what's called a compliance engagement. Management letter for this year, nothing in the current year. That's basically where you look at your guys' internal controls, make sure everything's working in order, everything's good there, so nothing to report as far as in the management letter this year. Also, same as last year, the report itself has a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you guys can get. As far as new standards this year, nothing new that affected the report this year. GASB 87, which was mentioned last year, was going to affect last year, would have affected this year. With COVID, that all got pushed back. That's not going to be in effect until FY23. That standard is a lease standard. It's essentially going to bring on any kind of operating lease onto your guys' financial statements as an asset and a liability, if material. In certain situations, if it's not material, it will be passed on. So overall, the report itself is going to look very similar to past years. Subsequent events footnote is finally starting to lighten up a little bit. All the COVID items are gone, with hopefully being out of that going forward. What's still left is the pension consolidation, which that'll be the last year, noting that actually happened in FY23, so that'll be gone. It's not something that's going to happen in the future. Financial highlights I'd like to go over. Page 17, that's your guys' governmental funds. That's what you guys are used to looking at on a regular basis. You guys are up about $6.5 million this year to about $23.7 million for a total fund balance, or about 9.5 months of expense. This does include about $1.8 million that you guys got for the ARP money, so that's a reason for that increase as well. You will see the other side of that. You guys got a total of about 3.6. Half of that was deferred until next year. When you guys are actually going to receive it, you're going to see that in FY23. More specifically, within the general fund, you're at about 17.1 million, of which almost about 14.5 million is unrestricted. That's about 8.5 months current year expense. Same kind of thing as the overall governmental fund statements. You guys saw a large increase, and a big chunk of that was the ARP monies. Other non-major funds all seem to be in good shape. MFT funds building up a little bit, but that happens for a reason. You guys have projects that you're setting aside those monies for. Same thing with the TIF funds. The recreation fund's getting a little lower, but that's obviously with COVID, memberships were down. That should hopefully come out as people start coming back, and COVID's coming out. Let's see then. And then business type funds, so your water sewer funds, page 19, your unrestricted balance there is about 10.5 million. That's about a year of expense, or slightly over a year expense, a year and 4 months. That also seems to be in a good position as well. You will also note, or should note, that a portion of the increase is related to donated public improvements that you guys got from the Patriot Estates development. Also then, governmental fund balance moved back up again this year. Did good with budget cuts again with COVID issues, and then obviously, as mentioned before, the ARP monies as well that helped that increase. So then finally on to the government-wide financial statements. These are the statements you guys are not used to looking to. These are when you bring in all your fixed assets on the books, things like the IMRF liabilities, the pension liabilities for the police. That's on page 14. It's more of a long-term focus. overall increase this year, was about 21 million. It's due to several factors. Page 18 gives you a very good reconciliation on how you get from the funds to the government-wide, but mainly it's the same things in most years. The differences are due to contributions to pensions. Those are expenditures on the funds. They reduce the liabilities on the statements or the government-wide statements. Same thing with debt payments, reduce liabilities. Capital assets are not an expense, so anytime you guys have capital projects on the funds, it's an expense. You get to the government-wide, that moves up to a fixed asset, and that's depreciated over a useful life. The government-wide statements related to government also had donations related to the Patriot Estates, so that's also a reason for that increase as well. And then also, the deferral amount of the ARP grant is reversed on the government-wide. That's full accrual. That's not considered deferred. There's not a 60-day rule related to the funds. So there's another 1.8 million that comes out in there as well. Finally, there was also a change in the OPEB, which is your other post-employment benefit calculation. There were some changes to the makeup and the people covered under that plan that resulted in a reduction in that liability that was recognized this year. So overall, those are the things that I like to go over. Unless anyone has any specific questions, that is it on my end.
No? All right. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to the. Sure.
Just, I don't often give Carolyn enough, or probably not enough public credit at all for what she does, so I'm going to give her some now. Thanks, Kevin. You know, Carolyn deals with all of our money. And since I've been here over 11 years now, you know, we've never had a management letter during that time at all, or any issues whatsoever with our audit, you know, or audits, the years that we've had to have single audits done on different funds. So that's entirely as a result of Carolyn's stewardship of the city's finances, her ability to be conservative in how we project revenues and expenditures, and just the overall management of funds and all the various funds that the city deals with. So I just wanted to publicly thank her and recognize her for the excellent job she does, especially since we have an independent auditing firm that comes and gives us this report publicly every year. It would be a lot harder to take if there were management letters and major issues along the way. So thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you, Carol. Great job. Moving on to the consent agenda, items 9A through 9F. I'm looking for a motion to approve those items. Alderman McClatchy?
Yeah, if there's nothing to be pulled, I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Harding?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Items on the agenda that you would like to discuss? No? Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is 10A, is a professional engineering services with Christopher B. Burke Engineering LTD. I am looking for a motion to approve an amendment of the fiscal year 23-24 budget in the amount of $41,000 to exercise the city's home rule authority to authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Christopher B. Burke LTD in the amount of $41,000 for professional engineering services for the design of a municipal right-of-way between Green Street and Elm Street, and to award a contract to CBBEL for this work. Director Strange?
Thank you, Mayor. So as council is aware, the property is basically bounded by Green Street, Elm Street, and Boone Lagoon. We've been looking to prepare these properties to develop. One of the things that has come up with pretty much every developer we've spoken with on the matter, and just what staff's own understanding of the situation is that it would be in the city's best interest to have a right-of-way that basically bisects these properties. It's actually shown as an attachment to the agenda supplement. So one of the reasons this is critical is that there needs to be some sort of an access to the state route, and given the massive accesses that are there and the proximity to the intersection, the intent of this project is to basically design this right-of-way and then work with IDOT permitting to get an entitlement to this access in this form, so that we have, or any future developer would have, a right to access the state route at the desired location. So we seek your concurrence for the budget amendment, as well as awarding to Christopher Burke Engineering, who is not a pre-qualified firm with us, but has been selected as an exercise of our home rule authority because of their specialties in this type of scope.
Thank you, Troy. So I'm looking for a motion to approve 10A as presented. Alderman Miller?
I'll make the motion to approve 10A as presented.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Santee?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Discussion on this item by council? Alderman Strack?
Troy, if I could just ask a quick question. In the illustration that is attached with this, it looks like the right-of-way is on some existing buildings. Is that right-of-way just in the description and graphic that was presented? Is that just a preliminary so that Christopher Burke has some idea where we're looking to put that?
Correct. It is preliminary. There is some fluidity to it if they need to adjust accordingly. But in general, this concept of, say, 100 to 200 feet west of the intersection has been something that's been brought up by multiple developers, and is something that we believe would also just be a good layout for access to the property and to divide it up as such.
And you're speaking of the right-of-way off of 120.
So no, well, so this would be a new right of way that basically goes from Route 120 to Green Street.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. So there's multiple curb cuts there, but in our experiences with developers trying to get accesses to state routes, the assumption from the past that existing curb cuts just gave you an entitlement to the same access is no longer holding true. We have a few developers right now that are experiencing that. So a lot of developers just want those assurances that they're going to have those rights, and this would be an effort to assure that right is there.
So the majority of this is looking to make sure we've got that egress and ingress off of 120 to that access point.
Yes, and wherever you go, it would have to be a right in, right out because of the median.
Sure. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, Troy, is basically we're going to spend $40,000 to solidify the fact that we're going to have a entranceway there on the 120.
That's correct. I would say that is, and it pretty much has been a critical thing for just about any developments that's ever been considered there. An important thing to note, my apologies for forgetting, right now we have a developer that has committed to sharing this cost at 50%, and that developer is still undisclosed at the moment, but you guys will keep finding out soon.
But in a nutshell, that's pretty much what it is. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by council? Open up for public comment for this item. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make public comment? See none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Miller? Yes.
Alderman Santee? Yes. Alderman Glass?
Yes.
Alderman McClatchy? Yes. Alderman Harding?
Yes.
Alderman Strack?
Yes.
Alderman Glenn?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is 10B, Whiskey Diablo Capital Development Fee Waiver or Amendment to Economic Incentive Agreement. Looking for a motion to consider a request from the owner of Whiskey Diablo Restaurant to either waive capital development fees in the amount of $17,149 or amend the existing economic incentive agreement by increasing the maximum sales tax rebate amount of $45,000 to $62,149. City Administrator Moorfield, do you have anything to say? Okay. We do have Julius here that is manager of all Dan Hart's properties for the most part, I guess. So if you have any questions for Julius, this would be the time to do it after we ask for a motion here. So I'm looking for a motion to, Alderman McClatchy?
Yeah, I would move to approve the amendment portion.
So you're amending the agreement.
So you're amending the agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm looking for a second to amend the agreement. Alderman Miller?
I would agree to second that.
Thank you. All right. So any questions by council for Julius since he's up at the podium? Alderman Santee, go ahead.
Related to a timetable, do we have any idea of what a timetable is if everything is going after this meeting?
Yes, so that was Mr. Hart's request that it stay on this agenda.
Yeah.
It basically, as soon as we can get word on if this goes through, then we would like to move forward. Ideally, hoping for a late spring, early summer finishing of the project and opening the doors.
Thank you.
Alderman McClatchy, was that your question? Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, Julie, you may have a seat.
Thank you.
I'll tell them you worked hard. All right. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Alderman McClatchy?
Yes.
Alderman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Devine?
Yes.
Alderman Stratt?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Martin?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is a presentation of the fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2042 General Fund Municipal Utility Tax Community Investment Plan. Director Strange?
Hello again. Thank you for your time, Mayor and members of the council. So this is a brief presentation, and Derek is going to be taking us through the slides. Brief presentation of the Community Investment Plan for the non-water sewer funded portion of our city assets. Essentially, it's the general fund portion of it, although it's funded through a municipal utility tax, the ComEd portion of it, which we'll get into a little bit later. So this presentation is attached with a draft community investment plan, the capital program for fiscal year 23-24. We're putting it to you in front of you in draft form, and assuming we receive your concurrence, it'll be approved final with the FY 23-24 budgeting process. And this plan is basically prepared through the same process that we prepared the Water Sewer Fund Community Investment Plan, which was presented to you last month in December. So next slide, please. So to begin with, we started this effort, and why do we undertake this effort? The reason we began this way back with our strategic planning sessions a number of years ago now, and if you remember, this slide was actually presented to you last year with when the initial concept of a community investment plan was first undertaken. This is a 20-year history, well, a 10-year history and a 10-year projection of our general fund operating revenues versus our general fund operating expenditures. And at the time, we were on a very bad trend line. We had projected, based upon the percentage increases of revenues versus expenditures, that operating expenditures were going to eclipse operating revenues in about 2025. The audit was just presented, and one of the common themes that came up in that audit was how much, some of the aid money that we had gotten during COVID, and then also just sales tax revenues because of higher rates of consumer spending in the past few years have been up. So we've taken a 2-3 year kind of break from this trend line. I wouldn't say we're exactly on this anymore, but if this trend line were to be resumed at some point, then we would start to reach a similar point. And it's important to note too, if you look at this trend line going back 10 years, this trend line happened with a 0.5% sales tax increase, which was put in maybe 2011 or thereabouts, and then also another sales tax increase in 2009. So these trend lines are doing what they're doing, even basically a total of 0.75% sales tax increases over about a 10-year period. Next slide, please. So you're all aware, you all remember the municipal utility taxes that were implemented last year associated with ComEd and NICOR. And it's important on this slide, I wanted to draw a distinction between maintenance and replacement of assets versus development of new assets. And that's been something that we've been disciplined on as far as how we implement this program, the capital program, and as far as how we speak about it. internally in our planning discussions and when we speak about it with you, members of the council. So in years prior to this implementation of this plan, all of our capital expenditures, those year-to-year capital balances that we had after meeting operating expenses and after meeting our minimum fund balance requirements for our 6-month and 9-month balances, the capital balances that remained at the end of the fiscal year were very inconsistent. There'd be some years where it'd be $2 million up. There'd be some years where it'd be $600,000 up. There'd be some years where we'd, barely be able to generate money for capital. It really varied quite a bit, and it didn't really allow us to deliberately plan and implement capital programs. It was kind of, feast or famine to some degree. And another issue that we had was because we were not distinguishing between maintenance and replacement projects versus the development of new assets, those two interests competed with each other. And I think one of the things that people who've had to manage operations, had to just replace routine pieces of equipment, maintain facilities, infrastructure, noticed was that our ability to just maintain what we have started to suffer because of the fact that both maintenance and replacement and development of new assets were competing with each other. So we drew that distinction when we developed this program and when we implemented the municipal utility taxes. They were passed in February of 22. So right now, we've only been collecting revenues on the ComEd portion of it, and that is what is being used for maintenance and replacement. The NICOR portion of it is not currently assigned, but the intention right now is to pay for new assets of whatever sort we plan for, we program, we pass, things like any sort of, planning document, and this would be the fund that would potentially fund those improvements. Just for your own kind of frame of reference, right now we're collecting about $1.2 million a year on the ComEd portion, and we are anticipating NICOR revenues of about $800,000 for a year. Next slide, please.
Troy doesn't know I was going to add in here, but I made my own notes. So just again, to stress the council did that by ordinance with those two utility taxes, that the electric utility tax would go towards maintenance and replacement, and that the gas tax would go towards new projects. And so that was done, I think, on the floor as part of the passage of the ordinance. That was language that was included to draw that distinction. And again, we've been collecting the electric, but we deferred the collection of the NICOR. So we haven't seen the full year of the NICOR yet, so we didn't budget anything for that because we didn't want to over budget and then have projects planned and all that. So we've only been planning for the electric portion of it. And then any new projects deferred from a planning standpoint at least a year until we see where we're at with the NICOR. And then we can have the same discussion for new projects as we are for maintenance and replacement. So sorry, Troy.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good to be slowed down every once in a while. I get going a little fast. All right. So again, drawing that distinction between maintenance and replacement and new projects. The only real kind of fund balance project we have or development or enhancement of an existing asset that we have this year is the Miller Point improvements. So right now, this is kind of split between both fiscal year 22-23 and fiscal year 23-24. Right now, we aren't really anticipating an available general fund capital balance for fiscal year 23-24, although I believe the financial information that we're starting to gain kind of early part of the year that may improve a little bit, but we don't know for certain at this time. So for right now, this is our big kind of new asset that we're developing for this year. Next slide, please. And then what you have in front of you is our fiscal year 23-24 capital program. It includes everything that we are funding as maintenance and replacement that is being paid for, again, with this ComEd money. So total program is $1.8 million. We would intend to start implementing it on May 1. The reason it's 1.8, even though we're anticipating revenues of 1.1 to 1.2, is because we actually started collecting these fees midway through the fiscal year last year. So we've got about $700,000 that will be collected in 22-23, plus 1.1 in revenues for 23-24. So it's a long list of projects and maybe a little bit hard to follow, but referring back to the report, Each of these projects has its own specific detail sheet, and that's included as Appendix B of the report. It includes a service life, a cost, department that sponsored the project, a project number that's indexed to the master spreadsheet. And then in addition, in this report, we also have Appendix A, which is basically a breakdown of the program, kind of all the way through the 20-year projection, breakdown of the program by category, which basically type of project, by department, by year-to-year expenditure. And then Appendix C is included at the end of the report, and that's basically the master spreadsheet. So way back when, we built this whole program just by quantifying every single replaceable, maintainable asset that the city had. We made assumptions that were reasonable about service life, about replacement cost, about program year, and we annualized it all to begin to develop just what was our, again, to use kind of a phrase I've been using both in this presentation and the water, the equity that was bleeding out of our system through depreciation. And our goal was to start replacing that through this maintenance and replacement program. So next slide, please. And this is just a slide to kind of clarify a little bit of our logic about how we intend to implement this program. I mean, obviously, it's fairly new. It's a new idea. It's a new concept for us. The process we're going to follow is just annually we're going to update the asset inventory because, we have our initial projection, but some things do depreciate a little faster or slower than we think that they will. We have to update costs, and just every year we try to refresh this and update the master spreadsheet to make sure that the snapshot that we took last year is updated, and the snapshot that we're taking this year is representative. Again, only projects that are maintenance and replacement projects are funded through the ComEd portion of the program. It's funded on a year-to-year basis, and we try to match revenues to expenditures so that we're not building up these large balances that aren't being put to productive use, but also that we're not getting ahead of ourselves and spending money that we don't have. And then if there are limitations as far as need versus what projects are due, we try to right-size the program and defer the projects and kind of reshuffle them based upon that current prioritization of what is absolutely most critical. And we had not put anything in this inventory that was not necessary to maintain and replace. These are all assets that we hold and that we intend to hold and maintain and replace because there's a reason why we have them in the first place. Another thing to consider, and I guess just to talk about just kind of a key concept about how we're implementing this, I would say is the word deliberate. Everything about this is deliberate. It's deliberately scheduled. It's deliberately funded. It's very deliberately planned. So for instance, for a project that would require design work, in the past, and I'm sure you've all seen it, especially those of you who've been on the council for a long time, there have been times where we've funded a project that required engineering work. It required design work, but we try to fund the entire project design through construction in one fiscal year. So you kick off design in May, you obviously have already lost the prime construction season by kicking off design in May, giving yourself one fiscal year to implement the project. So we've tried to look out a little bit ahead of ourselves, and any projects that require design or architectural work that we think is going to extend the project development process, we're going to fund the design or architecture work in the preceding year that we anticipate going to construction. And then the final step in the process is just after we have prepared our costs, refined our costs, gotten projects ready to implement, we put together an annual recommendation for your concurrence. And again, it goes back to that initial inventory of assets, which was presented to you when we initiated the program to begin with. So we're hoping that by doing this, we're not catching you off guard, because none of this is the first time you've seen it. Next year will be the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time, and so on. So there's some consistency in what we're putting forward before you. And then we seek your concurrence, and we go to work on implementation. Next slide, please. So this is just a cash flow projection as we're currently programmed out. Red bars are expenditures, capital expenditures. The blue bars are the revenues. So as you can see, we've got quite a few fiscal years where expenditures exceed revenues. Obviously, we will need to adjust and right-size the program so that we are not overspending what we collect. And really, the reason they're put in those years right now is just that's the year, based upon our initial projection, that we are projecting that improvement comes due. Obviously, we will have to shift things year to year to begin to right-size the program accordingly. So one of the things that you'll notice, the $1.1 million a year is what we're anticipating. When we talked about our anticipated revenues last year, when we passed the ordinance, we were thinking it was going to be more in the neighborhood of 1.3, maybe even 1.4. They've been a little bit smaller than anticipated for a number of reasons. One of which is that there has been some adjustment of some of the boundaries within which the fees themselves are collected. So those boundaries have gotten a little bit smaller from when we put together the initial projection versus where we are now. And then another thing to consider with regard to the sort of the buying power of these fees, and it was a concept that was discussed in the water sewer presentation last month. So these fees are largely fixed. It's a per unit tax, and a fixed number of cents per unit. Electric usage for the most part doesn't really increase or decrease too much on a year-to-year basis unless your population is going up. In general, the amounts that we're collecting, we anticipate them being fairly fixed, which means as inflation goes on, these will start to lose buying power over the next 10 years, which was something that was similar to concept to what is going to happen with these water sewer base fees. Fixed fees, fixed revenues versus inflation means that they'll start to lose a little bit of value over that 10-year projection. So next slide, please. And then this last slide is actually not really about the ComEd portion of the taxes anymore. What it's about is we drew that distinction between maintenance and replacement of existing versus development of new assets. So what this slide is just kind of putting on your radar, all the new projects, the asset addition projects, the facilities expansion projects, all the new things which are not paid for with the ComEd portion that we've either initiated design on, we've approved planning documents that commit us to implementing these things. So you've got Venice Avenue reconstruction, the city fueling station, the police sally port and parking facility. We've got some sidewalk gaps we've been looking to fill in, our downtown streetscape, anything else that's going to happen over at Miller Point, our Riverwalk expansion, and just general downtown improvements. And again, we do have the TIF, which will contribute to some of these revenues that will allow us to implement some of these projects. And then we've also got the Route 31 non-water sewer improvements. We did get some good news just last week. Originally, our Route 31 costs we thought were going to be for street lighting and the multi-use path. The multi-use path is now going to be funded 100% by IDOT. So we're probably just looking at the couple $1 million for the street lighting, for which back in September we passed a resolution of support and put in a grant application with the ITEP program to fund that. So it's kind of a summary of all these additional projects that are these development of new asset projects that we've been trying to draw the distinction between the two purposes. So you look at these projects, they total probably about $20 to $25 million. We've got some revenue sources, but right now there are probably some limitations in terms of implementing all of these projects given the existing revenues that we have. So it would be advisable at some point to take a look at everything that we are trying to accomplish and everything we've committed ourselves to with our planning documents, and really look at a long-term cash flow of all these and see where our shortcomings are, see what the projected expenditure versus anticipated revenues that we currently have are, and see if we can get those two to match. So thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions you may have. Again, we're seeking your concurrence for the draft program. 24 budget.
Can I talk? Sorry. Like Carolyn, in this case, it's Troy. Before COVID, we saw somewhere in one of the publications where Lake Zurich had put together a community investment plan, and it was a 20-year plan and all that, and actually went and met with them or had them over here to meet, and it was a complete change, basically, from, as Troy mentioned, the way that capital planning had been done before. Whereas, if you remember, we used to have priority A, B, C, D, and the A priorities were this, and then it was basically a negotiation, an internal negotiation between myself and department directors on what were really top priorities and what weren't priorities, and what new projects we could do and weren't, and then what do we have for money. And then roads, at the time, roads were in the mix. And that was like, well, roads are always going to be first, so those have to be carved out first, but we still have these, and it was just the way it was done was the way it was done, right? That's the way that capital planning had been done, and so to be able to change it and shift gears, Troy's been the one. I mean, obviously we consult on it and how this is going to be implemented, but I truly think that this is a program that will last far beyond any of our times. It's something that this staff and this council and future staff and future councils will be able to use as a blueprint to ensure that revenues coming in are going to fund maintenance and replacement programs, and with the utility taxes, the electric tax, or that new projects can be implemented with the ComEd tax, and then we figure these other ones out along the way, which we have ideas on also. But this work has been completely Troy's. Obviously, directors participate in it too, because he needs to have real conversations with myself and all the department directors on what's really maintenance and replacement, what's an accurate replacement schedule for vehicles, how long is this roof going to last, what needs to be done, and to be able to program that in. And so we've had some great discussions, and really everybody's participated in it, but it's been Troy's task to put the plan together and to present it to you. So good job, Troy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff reports? Anyone have any questions? Sure, go ahead.
I just want to echo that, Troy, and say thank you very much. I am all about process and not winging it, and your plan, as you've developed it, sets forth process. And I think, as Derek just said, this will outlive us all, and it's a great way to spend money by knowing what the future is. So thank you for providing us your expertise in developing a process that we can all live with. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Staff reports. Is there any other staff reports? Bill, you have anything? No? Okay.
Plan for Shamrock the Fox. Anybody has any sponsors that they have no interest in? Send them my way.
We can meet tomorrow.
2 months from tomorrow.
Yes.
Counting the days.
All right. Perfect. I have nothing this evening. I took off item 15, and I'm looking for, city council comments. I'm all over the place there. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, for years I've been lobbying about streets, as far as getting our streets done and more revenue, and now we're at a point to where we're almost consistently going to have $4 million a year down the road here every year. So now I'm going on another tangent. With the streets, we need a concrete program. We need to start looking at aprons that are crumbling because a lot of people don't look at it, but if the aprons are cracked, the water gets under there, and what happens? It gets underneath the roads. We take a look at our sidewalks, and if we have sidewalks that are uneven, and we have staff come out and grind them down a little. You take a look at a lot of the older subdivisions, and when I say older, let's say if they're 30 years or older, you're finding where sidewalks have these little, what look like golf ball pivots in the sidewalks. You see cracks in a lot of sidewalks. We really need to start looking at redoing some of that throughout our whole residential areas before it gets too bad. And again, you start talking now, it might take 6 years down the road before we finally come up with a program, and maybe not. But that's what I'll be handling on for now.
All right. Troy, why don't we get together at some point and discuss, Derek,
we can discuss that, so.
Any other city council comments? Alderman Santee?
Director Hobson, someone brought this up earlier, but how many memberships do we have today?
How many what?
At Rec Center memberships?
I'd have to get back to you. I think we were 1,100 in that range.
Okay.
For an exact
And
number.
what was our peak?
Our peak, we were over 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Which wasn't really, honestly, it wasn't sustainable. It was never designed to
Sure.
handle over 2,000. But it was nice when,
Yeah.
when it was there.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
You know, as long as Alderman Santee brought that up, where are we as far as, do you feel with the revenues that are coming in on the rec center to where we're gonna have the bonds paid off and we'll be looking at another possible addition?
Well, we're trying to get back to revenue neutral as the first goal. We did raise our membership rates $3 person this year in order to do that. So we'll be doing analysis right now during budget season. We're not on track to pay it off early, so we're probably still 13 years left to go. Okay. Yeah, I think it was a 20-year bond that we took out and we opened in 2016.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Santee?
I'll make that motion.
Alderman McClatchy
I'll
for a
second.
second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.